They said it was impossible. A 3.8-kilometer shot in desert wind conditions, with a target moving at 60 kilometers per hour, through heat distortion that made the horizon dance like liquid glass. They said no one could make that shot. They were wrong. Before we continue, drop a comment below telling us what city or country you're watching this from. Her name was Captain Samantha Ghost Reeves, and she didn't believe in impossible, only improbable. At 32 years old, she had become something of a legend whispered about in the shadowed corners of Fort Benning's sniper school, a name that instructors mentioned with equal parts respect and disbelief. But legends aren't born from comfort. They're forged in the crucible of doubt, humiliation, and the burning need to prove that excellence has no gender. Samantha grew up in Cody, Wyoming, where the wind never stopped talking and the mountains taught you to be patient. Her father, a ranch hand with hands like weathered leather, taught her to shoot when she was 7 years old, not for sport, not for glory, but because in Wyoming you learned to provide for yourself, or you didn't survive the winter. By the time she was 12, she could hit a prairie dog at 400 yards with iron sights. By 15, she was out shooting men twice her age at the county fair. But precision shooting on a ranch and precision shooting in the U.S. Army Sniper School were two completely different worlds. When Samantha enlisted at 19, she knew exactly what she wanted: to become the best marksman the Army had ever seen. What she didn't expect was the wall of mockery that greeted her the first day she walked into the Special Operations Training Course at Fort Bragg. "Look what we got here, boys," Sergeant Major Vic Brennan had said, his voice dripping with condescension as he circled her like a predator sizing up prey. "A little cowgirl thinks she can run with the wolves." The other candidates, all men, all hardened infantry soldiers with multiple deployments, laughed. It wasn't cruel laughter, not exactly. It was dismissive, the kind of laughter that says you don't belong here, and we all know it. Samantha said nothing. She'd learned early that words were wasted on men who'd already made up their minds. She simply picked up her rifle, adjusted the scope, and waited for the qualification range. That first week was hell. Not because of the physical demands. She'd trained her body to endure pain that would break most people. The hell came from the constant, grinding psychological warfare. Every mistake was amplified. Every success was downplayed. When she scored expert marks on the marksmanship test, Brennan accused her of getting lucky. When she completed the ruck march in record time, he claimed the weight in her pack had been miscalibrated. But Samantha had something most of them didn't. She'd been underestimated her entire life, and she'd learned to turn doubt into fuel. By the end of the first month, she wasn't just keeping up with the men. She was outperforming them. Her shooting scores were consistently in the top 3. Her fieldcraft was immaculate. Her ability to read wind, calculate trajectory, and adjust for atmospheric conditions was almost supernatural. The instructors noticed. The other candidates noticed. And Sergeant Major Brennan? He noticed most of all. "Reeves," he'd said one evening after a particularly brutal day of training, pulling her aside as the others headed to the barracks. "You think you're special, don't you?" Samantha met his eyes without flinching. "No, Sergeant Major. I think I'm qualified." His jaw tightened. Qualification isn't enough out there. When the bullets start flying, when your spotter's bleeding out beside you, when command is screaming in your ear and you've got 3 seconds to make a shot that could save 20 lives or end them, that's when I'll know if you belong. "Then put me in that situation," Samantha said quietly, "and I'll show you." 3 months later, she graduated at the top of her class. Not second. Not pretty good for a woman. First. Unambiguously, undeniably first. The Army awarded her the coveted tab, and she was assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment as a designated marksman. But graduating was just the beginning. The real test came in the field. Her first deployment was to Afghanistan's Helmand province, a landscape of dust, death, and IEDs buried in roads that looked like every other road. Her unit, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, was tasked with providing overwatch for convoy operations through the Sangin Valley, one of the most dangerous corridors in the entire theater. The men in her unit were professional, but cold. They'd heard about her scores, her reputation, but reputation meant nothing until you'd taken fire together, until you'd watched each other's backs when the world was exploding around you. Her spotter was a grizzled staff sergeant named Marcus Cole, a man with 15 years in the Army and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He didn't say much, but his eyes said everything. Prove it. Their first week was quiet. Too quiet. Samantha spent her days in a sniper hide overlooking Route Blue, a dirt road that coalition forces used to move supplies between forward operating bases. She watched. She waited. She calculated wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure. She memorized every rock, every compound, every window that could hide a threat. Marcus watched her work with grudging respect. "You're thorough," he admitted on the third day. "I'll give you that." "Thorough keeps people alive," Samantha replied, never taking her eyes off the scope. On the 8th day, everything changed. Intelligence had reported increased Taliban activity in the region. A high-value target, a bomb maker responsible for dozens of coalition deaths, was suspected to be moving through the area. Command wanted him alive, but if capture wasn't possible, elimination was authorized. Samantha and Marcus took position on a ridgeline overlooking a suspected transit route. It was a brutal position, exposed to the sun, no shade, temperatures pushing 115 degrees. But it offered a clear view of nearly 4 kilometers of open desert. "Contact," Marcus whispered, his spotting scope trained on a dust cloud in the distance. "Convoy, 3 vehicles, moving fast on Route Blue." Samantha shifted her Macmillan TAC-50, a .50 caliber rifle capable of reaching out to distances that seemed almost mythical. Through her scope, she could see the vehicles. 2 Toyota pickups and a battered sedan, moving in formation. "Second vehicle," Marcus said, reading the intelligence packet on his tablet. "Driver matches the description of our HVT. Dark beard, red scarf, scar over left eye." Samantha found the vehicle, adjusted for wind, a crosswind of 15 kilometers per hour from the west, and calculated the lead. The vehicle was moving at approximately 60 kilometers per hour. At this distance, nearly 3,800 meters, the bullet would take over 4 seconds to reach the target. In that time, the vehicle would travel almost 70 meters. "That's an impossible shot," Marcus said quietly. "Even for you." Samantha's finger rested gently on the trigger. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat became a metronome. In that moment, nothing existed except the target, the wind, and the immutable laws of physics. "They said qualifying was impossible too," she whispered, and then she pulled the trigger. The sound of the Macmillan TAC-50 was apocalyptic, a thunderous crack that seemed to split the desert sky itself. The recoil drove into Samantha's shoulder like a sledgehammer, but she'd braced for it, her body absorbing the impact with practiced efficiency. Through the scope, she watched the bullet's trajectory, invisible to the naked eye but traced in her mind through years of training and thousands of rounds downrange. 4.2 seconds. That's how long it took for the .50 caliber round to cross 3,800 meters of desert air, fighting gravity, wind drift, and the Coriolis effect caused by the Earth's rotation itself. 4.2 seconds where the world held its breath. Marcus had his spotting scope locked on the convoy, his voice a steady metronome. Flight time. Tracking. Tracking. Then, impossibly, the front driver's side tire of the second vehicle exploded in a shower of rubber and metal. The vehicle swerved violently, the driver fighting for control as the rim dug into the hard-pan desert surface. The convoy immediately scattered, the lead vehicle accelerating, the rear vehicle braking hard. The disabled pickup spun twice before crashing into a shallow drainage ditch, sending up a plume of dust that looked like a small explosion. Marcus lowered his scope slowly, his face a mask of disbelief. That was... Confirmed hit, Samantha said calmly, already working the bolt action, chambering another round. Her heart was pounding, adrenaline singing through her veins, but her hands were steady. Target vehicle disabled. Convoy stopped. "Ghost, this is Overwatch Command." The radio crackled to life. "Did you just engage at that range? Confirm your shot." "Affirmative, Command. Target vehicle disabled with precision fire. Stand by for QRF to secure HVT." There was a long pause. Then, "Ghost, that's a record distance for a vehicle disable. Command is dispatching quick reaction force now. Maintain Overwatch. How in the hell did you make that shot? Samantha didn't answer. She was already scanning the area around the disabled vehicles, looking for threats, watching for anyone trying to escape or reinforce. Through her scope, she could see figures emerging from the vehicles, some injured, others attempting to flee on foot. Second vehicle occupants are mobile, she reported, counting 4 individuals, one matching HVT description, moving northeast toward compound cluster at grid reference. The quick reaction force arrived within 6 minutes. 2 Humvees and an MRAP, soldiers spilling out with weapons raised. Samantha provided overwatch as they secured the scene, her crosshairs moving from figure to figure, ready to engage if anyone posed a threat to her brothers on the ground. The operation was textbook. Within 15 minutes, the high-value target was in custody, along with 2 associates. Inside the disabled vehicle, EOD found enough explosive materials to build a dozen IEDs. When Samantha and Marcus finally extracted from their position and returned to the forward operating base, word had already spread. Soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch her walk past. Some nodded, others stared. A few even applauded. Captain Rodriguez, the company commander, was waiting for her outside the Tactical Operations Center. He was a career officer, a man who'd earned his respect through 3 combat deployments and a chest full of decorations. Captain Reeves, he said, his voice formal but his eyes showing genuine respect. That was one hell of a shot. Just doing my job, sir. No. Rodriguez shook his head. That was beyond the job. That was extraordinary. Command wants a full debrief. The brass is already talking about putting you up for a commendation. Samantha felt uncomfortable with the attention. She'd made the shot because it needed to be made, not for glory. Sir, Marcus spotted. The intel team provided the targeting data. It was a team effort. A team effort that you executed flawlessly under impossible conditions, Rodriguez said. Take the win, Captain. You've earned it. But not everyone saw it that way. That evening, as Samantha was cleaning her rifle in the armory, a ritual she never skipped, no matter how exhausted she was, Sergeant Major Vic Brennan walked in. He'd been transferred to their battalion 6 weeks earlier, brought in to tighten up discipline after a series of operational failures. Their eyes met across the armory. The space suddenly felt very small. Quite a shot today, Reeves, Brennan said, his voice neutral but his posture aggressive. He moved closer, invading her space in a way that was technically professional, but felt like a challenge. Already got half the base calling you the ghost of Ridge Valley. It was the shot that needed to be taken, Sergeant Major. Was it? Brennan leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. Or was it a glory shot? A record-breaking, ego-stroking, look-at-me-I'm-special kind of shot? Samantha's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. The target was disabled. The HVT was captured. 20 pounds of explosive materials were taken off the battlefield. That's not ego. That's mission success. Mission success? Brennan repeated mockingly. You know what I think? I think you took an unnecessary risk. I think you could have called in air support, could have waited for the convoy to enter a better kill zone, could have done it by the book. But you wanted to be the hero. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Other soldiers in the armory had stopped their work, watching the confrontation unfold. Samantha set down her cleaning rod carefully. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but edged with steel. With respect, Sergeant Major, you weren't on that ridgeline. You didn't see the tactical situation. The convoy was moving through open terrain with multiple escape routes. Air support was 15 minutes out. In 15 minutes, that HVT could have been in a compound, surrounded by civilians, impossible to extract without massive collateral damage. I had a shot. I took it, and it worked. This time, Brennan said. But what about next time? What happens when you miss? When you get someone killed because you were too busy trying to be a legend? The question was meant to cut, meant to plant doubt. But Samantha had faced doubt her entire life. She'd learned to metabolize it, transform it into something stronger. Then I'll live with that decision, she said simply. Just like you live with yours, Sergeant Major. Just like every soldier in this room lives with theirs. That's what we signed up for. Brennan stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he pushed off the workbench and headed for the door. At the threshold, he paused. You know what your problem is, Reeves? You think being good is enough? But out here, being good just makes you a target. And targets? They don't last long. After he left, the armory was silent. Marcus, who'd been watching from the corner, came over and sat down beside her. Don't let him get in your head, he said quietly. He's not, Samantha replied, resuming her work on the rifle. But that wasn't entirely true. Brennan's words had found their mark, not because they were right, but because they touched on her deepest fear, that one day her skill wouldn't be enough. That one day someone would die because she hesitated, or because she was too confident, or because the universe simply decided it was her turn to fail. Over the next 3 months, Samantha conducted 17 more Overwatch missions. She made 12 confirmed shots ranging from 800 meters to 2,400 meters. She saved countless lives by eliminating threats before they could engage coalition forces. Her reputation grew with each mission. Soldiers requested her by name for high-risk operations. Intelligence officers sought her input on targeting packages. But Brennan's hostility grew as well. He began finding reasons to write her up for minor infractions: uniform discrepancies, paperwork filed late, equipment not stored exactly to regulation. None of it was serious enough to affect her career, but it was death by 1,000 cuts, a constant reminder that no matter how good she was, some people would never see past her gender. Then came the mission that would change everything. Intelligence received word that a coalition convoy carrying medical supplies and personnel would be ambushed on Route Silver, a mountain pass known for Taliban activity. The attack was planned for dawn, 3 days out. Instead of avoiding the route, Command decided to turn the ambush into a counter-ambush, letting the Taliban believe their trap would work, while positioning assets to eliminate them. Samantha was assigned as primary sniper for the operation, with 2 additional sniper teams providing support. The mission brief was clear: protect the convoy at all costs, eliminate threats before they could engage, and capture or kill a Taliban commander known to be planning the attack. The night before the operation, Rodriguez pulled her aside. This is the biggest op we've run in 6 months, he said. A lot of eyes are going to be watching. A lot of careers are riding on this. Mine included? Samantha asked. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Especially yours. Brennan's been making noise up the chain of command, questioning your judgment, your risk tolerance. Some of the brass are listening. You nail this mission, and all that noise goes away. You screw it up. I won't screw it up, sir. I know you won't, Rodriguez said. But Samantha, be careful out there. This feels bigger than just another convoy escort. Something about it doesn't sit right. His instinct was correct. What they didn't know, what intelligence had missed, was that this wasn't just an ambush. It was a trap specifically designed to kill the ghost of Ridge Valley. Chapter 3. The Valley of Shadows. Dawn broke over the Kunar province like molten copper being poured across jagged mountains. Samantha had been in position for 4 hours, nestled into a hide site carved into the rocky face of a cliff overlooking Route Silver. From her vantage point, she had a commanding view of the kill zone. A narrow stretch of road flanked by steep terrain on both sides, the perfect place for an ambush. Marcus was beside her, his spotting scope sweeping the ridgelines across the valley. 2 other sniper teams were positioned on adjacent peaks, creating interlocking fields of fire. On paper, it was a perfect defensive setup. But Samantha's instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Too quiet, she whispered, more to herself than Marcus. Always is before hell breaks loose, Marcus replied. But she could hear the tension in his voice. He felt it too. The convoy was scheduled to enter the valley at 6:30 hours. At 6:25, Samantha's radio crackled. All Overwatch elements, this is Convoy Actual. We are 5 mics out from your position. Report status. Overwatch 1 ready, Samantha responded. Overwatch 2 ready, came the voice of Sergeant Davis from the southern position. Overwatch 3 ready, Corporal Mitchell reported from the north. Roger all elements. Convoy is rolling. Through her scope, Samantha watched the lead vehicle appear around the bend, an MRAP with its distinctive V-shaped hull designed to deflect IED blasts. Behind it came 2 supply trucks and another MRAP bringing up the rear. 23 soldiers and medical personnel, all depending on her eyes, her judgment, her trigger finger. Visual on Convoy. Marcus confirmed. No threats visible. Terrain looks clean. But it didn't feel clean. Samantha's eyes swept the ridge lines, looking for anything out of place. A glint of metal. A shadow where there shouldn't be one. The slightest disturbance in the natural pattern of rocks and vegetation. There, on the eastern ridge, approximately 100 to 200 meters out. A small dark shape that could have been a rock but wasn't quite the right color for the surrounding terrain. Marcus, check eastern ridge, grid 427893. Something's off. Marcus swung his scope over. I see it. Could be a fighting position. Could be natural. Hard to tell from this angle. The convoy was halfway through the valley now, the vulnerable point where an ambush would be most effective. Samantha's finger rested on the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. That would come only when she'd made the decision to fire. Overwatch, this is command. A new voice broke into the radio net. Sergeant Major Brennan. I'm monitoring this operation from Tok. Rules of engagement remain firm. Positive identification required before engaging. Do not fire unless you have confirmed hostile intent. Samantha keyed her mic. Understood, Command. Possible fighting position observed on Eastern Ridge. Request permission to engage if hostiles present themselves. Negative, Overwatch 1. Do not engage unless fired upon. We can't afford an international incident over a suspicious rock. Marcus glanced at her. He's setting you up. I know. The words had barely left her mouth when the world exploded. The first RPG came from the eastern ridge, exactly where Samantha had spotted the anomaly. It streaked across the valley, trailing white smoke, slamming into the lead MRAP with a deafening blast. The vehicle rocked but held, its armor doing its job. But that was just the opening move. Suddenly, the ridgelines erupted with muzzle flashes. Machine gun fire tore into the convoy from three sides. More RPGs launched. The Taliban had positioned at least 30 fighters in concealed positions that intelligence had completely missed. All elements engage! 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 Rodriguez's voice screamed over the radio. Samantha was already moving. Her first shot took out the RPG gunner on the eastern ridge. A clean headshot at 200 meters. The body tumbled from its position. She worked the bolt, chambered another round, acquired a new target. A machine gunner raking the convoy with PKM fire. Adjust for wind. Compensate for elevation. Breathe. Squeeze. The machine gunner went down. To her left, she could hear the crack of Davis's rifle engaging targets on the southern ridge. Mitchell was firing methodically from the north, but the volume of enemy fire was overwhelming. The Taliban had prepared for this, had positioned themselves perfectly to create a killing field. Overwatch, this is Convoy Actual. Rodriguez's voice was strained. We're taking heavy casualties. I need those guns silenced now. Samantha was working as fast as the laws of physics would allow. Acquire target, calculate, fire, work bolt, acquire new target. Each shot took 3 to 5 seconds. She was good, the best, but she was still just one person against 30. Then she saw him. On the western ridge, partially concealed behind a boulder, a man with a radio. Not firing, just observing and talking. The commander, the one running this ambush. Marcus, Western Ridge, 1-800 meters, man with radio. That's the shot caller. Marcus found him. Confirmed. But he's almost completely behind cover. You've got maybe a 6-inch window. 6 inches. At 1-800 meters. With wind. With chaos. With her unit dying below. They said the convoy shot was impossible too. She whispered, echoing her own words from months ago. She shifted her aim, adjusted for the extreme angle, factored in the crosswind that was gusting unpredictably through the valley. The commander moved slightly, exposing his head and shoulder for a fraction of a second. It was now or never. The Macmillan roared. Through the scope, Samantha saw the commander's radio explode in a shower of plastic and electronics. He spun, clutching his shoulder where the round had struck, and tumbled down the ridge out of sight. Hit, Marcus called. But he's still mobile. Immediately, the enemy fire became disorganized. Without their commander, the Taliban fighters lost coordination. Some continued firing, but others were breaking contact, retreating into the mountain passes. "Keep the pressure on," Samantha ordered into the radio. "Don't let them regroup." For the next 10 minutes, the 3 sniper teams systematically dismantled the ambush. Every Taliban fighter who exposed themselves became a target. Every fighting position was neutralized. By the time the shooting stopped, 12 enemy combatants were confirmed dead, and the rest had fled. The convoy was damaged but intact. 3 soldiers wounded, none killed. Given the ferocity of the ambush, it was a miracle. When Samantha and Marcus finally exfiltrated from their position and reached the convoy, she found Rodriguez leaning against his MRAP, his uniform torn and dirty, but alive. "Ghost," he said simply, and pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. "You saved us, all of us." "Just doing my—" "Don't," Rodriguez cut her off. "Don't say just doing my job. What you did up there was extraordinary. I've been in this war for 3 tours, and I've never seen shooting like that." The medical personnel were already working on the wounded. Soldiers were securing the perimeter, collecting intelligence from the enemy dead. It was controlled chaos, the aftermath of violence. Brennan arrived via helicopter an hour later, accompanied by a colonel from brigade. They walked through the scene, examining the enemy positions, reviewing the after-action reports. Finally, Brennan approached Samantha. She stood at attention, her rifle still slung across her back, her face streaked with camouflage paint and dirt. "Captain Reeves," Brennan said formally. "The colonel would like a word." The colonel was a tall man with silver hair and 3 rows of ribbons on his chest. He looked like he'd been carved from granite and discipline. "Captain, I've reviewed the preliminary reports," the colonel said. "I've also spoken with Captain Rodriguez, Sergeant Cole, and reviewed the drone footage of the engagement. You eliminated 11 enemy combatants, disabled their command and control, and broke the ambush before it could become a massacre. That's exceptional work. Thank you, sir." The colonel glanced at Brennan, then back to Samantha. "I'm also aware that there have been concerns raised about your operational methods, concerns about risk-taking, about seeking glory over mission objectives." Samantha's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "Having seen the evidence," the colonel continued, "I can say definitively that those concerns are unfounded. You're being recommended for the Bronze Star with Valor. Additionally, you're being reassigned to an advanced training program at Fort Benning to help develop the next generation of Army snipers. Congratulations, Captain. The Army needs more soldiers like you." For a moment, Samantha couldn't speak. She looked at Brennan, whose face was carefully neutral, but whose eyes showed barely suppressed anger. "Thank you, sir," she finally managed. "I'm honored." That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Samantha sat alone on a ridge overlooking the fire base. Marcus found her there, 2 cups of terrible coffee in his hands. "Heard you're leaving us," he said, handing her a cup. "Looks like it. They're making the right call. You've got knowledge that needs to be shared." He paused. "For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. First day we met, I didn't think you'd make it a week. Now, I'd follow you into hell, Ghost." Samantha smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her usual reserve. "That means more to me than the medal, Marcus." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the valley below, soldiers were laughing, sharing stories, grateful to be alive. Because of preparation, because of training, because of a woman from Wyoming who refused to accept that impossible was anything more than a word. 3 months later, Captain Samantha Ghost Reeves stood in front of a classroom at Fort Benning, facing 40 sniper candidates, 38 men and 2 women. "They'll tell you that some shots are impossible," she began, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had proven herself in the only arena that mattered. "They'll tell you that conditions aren't right, that the distance is too far, that the odds are against you. And you know what? They'll be right. Most shots are impossible, until someone makes them." She paused, making eye contact with each candidate. "I'm not here to teach you to be heroes. I'm here to teach you to be professionals, to make the hard shots when they count, to protect your brothers and sisters when everything is falling apart, and most importantly, to come home at the end of the day, knowing you did everything in your power to complete the mission." One of the female candidates raised her hand. "Ma'am, what do you say to people who don't think women belong in combat roles?" Samantha smiled. I don't say anything. I let my shooting do the talking. And I suggest you do the same. If you believe courage has no gender and excellence knows no limits, comment on or below.